The foundation of living soil really is the key to a thriving garden. It's not just about what you add, but how everything beneath the surface works together, you know? Building healthy soil takes time, but the rewards are worth it in the end. Most gardeners are still trying to push their plants with synthetic fertilizers and thinking that more NPK equals better growth. That's a huge mistake. Over-reliance on chemical boosts can actually harm your soil structure and stunt root development. Without a healthy living soil, all the watering, pruning, and pest control in the world won't give you strong, resilient plants. I've seen this firsthand in raised beds, small backyard plots, and even hydroponic setups, roots that never really expand just because the biology underneath is missing. That's why today we're talking about the real powerhouse duo every serious gardener should be using: mycorrhizal fungi and worms. Before we get too deep, make sure you subscribe to Farm Logic for no-nonsense practical gardening techniques that actually improve your harvests. Healthy roots aren't just about digging deep, they're about living soil, feeding them from every angle. So let's really dig in for a moment. Mycorrhizal fungi work by forming these incredible partnerships with plant roots, sort of like nature's own underground internet, helping plants absorb water and nutrients way more efficiently. Meanwhile, worms are constantly munching their way through soil, breaking down organic matter and leaving behind castings that are basically pure gold for your plants. Together, these two create a thriving, living soil ecosystem, one that supports stronger plants, bigger harvests, and, honestly, a lot less work for you in the long run. So the first thing to understand is that roots don't grow in isolation. They really rely on a network of microbes to feed them, and that's where mycorrhizal fungi come in. These fungi, well, they form a symbiotic relationship with your plant roots, essentially extending the root system hundreds of times over. They latch onto the root hairs and act as nutrient highways, drawing in phosphorus, nitrogen, and trace minerals from the soil that roots alone could never reach. Without fungi, your roots are basically trying to work blindfolded. This is where worms come into play. Red wigglers, night crawlers, or any high-quality composting worms, like those found in VermisTerra Earthworm Castings, physically break down organic matter and excrete castings packed with beneficial microbes. These castings aren't just fertilizer, they're living food for the fungi and roots. I always recommend a fine, well-cured casting to avoid clumps, and the VermisTerra 10-pound standard castings are excellent for this because they're lab-tested, low moisture, and packed with active biology. The product link is in the description if you want to see it for yourself. When you bring together healthy worm castings and beneficial fungi, you're really creating a powerhouse for your soil. The synergy between these two means that your plants can access nutrients more efficiently and develop stronger, more resilient root systems. Honestly, it's one of those combinations that just makes sense for any gardener looking to get the most out of their efforts. If you're not combining worms and fungi, you're leaving growth on the table. You might think that just adding one or the other is enough, but I've tried it both ways. In raised beds, where I only used mycorrhizal inoculant, roots spread, but soil structure was uneven and moisture retention was inconsistent. Beds with only worm castings showed strong microbial activity, but the root systems didn't extend as efficiently into new soil. The combination is what makes roots explode in size and efficiency. For small backyard gardens, I mix about 1 cup of fine worm castings per square foot of bed, then lightly dust the root zone with a teaspoon of powdered mycorrhizal inoculant per plant. In hydroponic systems, I dissolve the castings in water at roughly a 1:10 ratio and apply it directly to the root chamber weekly. This keeps microbial life active without clogging lines or harming pH balance. All right, so let's talk about timing, methods, and troubleshooting. This is honestly where a lot of folks go wrong, even if they've got the best ingredients. The way you apply these amendments, and when you do it, can make all the difference in the world. If you're running into issues, it's often down to application errors or poor timing rather than the materials themselves. The timing and method of application matter more than most people realize. Don't just throw these materials onto the surface and hope for results. Roots need access at the moment they're expanding. When transplanting seedlings, I always create a small pocket at the bottom of the hole, about 2 inches deep, and layer the worm castings first. Then, I sprinkle the mycorrhizal inoculant over it before setting the plant in. This gives roots immediate access to both microbes. For established plants, I top dress with about 1/4 cup per plant every 6 to 8 weeks and gently water it in. Over time, worms naturally work these nutrients deeper into the soil, while the fungi extend through root networks, creating a self-sustaining system. It's important to avoid some common mistakes, If you apply too much or too little, you might not get the results you're hoping for. Just stick to the recommended amounts and be patient. Over time, you'll notice stronger, healthier plants and improved soil structure. The key is consistency and letting nature do its thing. Don't fall for the more is better trap. A common mistake is thinking that piling on more castings or fungi will make roots grow faster. That's not how it works. Over-application can actually create imbalances. For example, too many castings can temporarily spike nitrogen and overwhelm delicate seedlings, while too much powdered mycorrhizal inoculant can dry out the root zone if not watered in properly. Hydroponic gardeners, don't skip the biology. A lot of hydro growers overlook soil biology entirely, but even in a soilless system, worms and fungi or their derivatives can make a huge difference. I use worm casting tea made by steeping a cup of VermisTerra castings in a gallon of water for 24 hours, then aerating it while feeding roots. This adds both microbes and soluble nutrients, improving root hair proliferation and overall nutrient uptake. Watch for soil conditions and microbe compatibility. Not all soils support both worms and fungi equally. Sandy soils might dry out faster, so I mix in a little organic compost with castings to improve water retention. pH is another factor. Most mycorrhizal fungi prefer slightly acidic to neutral conditions, around 6.0 to 7.0. The long-term payoff isn't just bigger roots, it's stronger, healthier plants. When you consistently use this combination, you start to see changes in plant resilience. Seedlings establish faster, fruiting plants produce earlier and more evenly, and stress recovery from heat or drought improves. In a small backyard garden, I scatter about 1/2 cup of worm castings around each plant. In raised beds, I mix a 2:1 ratio of castings to compost, and in hydroponic systems, I create a liquid worm casting infusion. These methods are flexible, measurable, and repeatable. I see a lot of gardeners get caught up in so-called miracle fertilizers or synthetic boosters. They may see quick growth, but roots remain shallow and the soil biology dies off. By focusing on living soil and the synergy between worms and fungi, you build a foundation that allows plants to feed themselves efficiently. If you want to try this approach yourself, I've linked the VermisTerra Earthworm Castings in the description. Getting the roots right is the single most effective step toward bigger yields. If you found this video helpful, make sure you subscribe to Farm Logic for more advanced practical gardening techniques that work.